Well, good morning. Yes, here we are at the Ask Academy again, offering you some standards-based assessment that tests for all the 10th and 11th graders across the state of New Mexico. And here we're doing probability and statistics for that prep. And so the opportunity here for the next few minutes is to get some of that insight in statistics and probability for the standards-based assessment, which in April all sophomores and juniors across the state of New Mexico will be taking. So I'm looking at the test booklet again for the from the Holt that we're using as a practice booklet that they have provided for all schools across the state. We're gonna look at the data analysis and probability portion of that, and we're going to use the next few minutes just to kind of highlight, give some specifics on what we should be expecting. So the first concept is display of data. And so what we mean by that in probability and statistics is, do you know how to read tables? You know how to look at a table and has a couple of columns where you're comparing a couple of things like years and then annual rainfall. Or can you read that? Can you look at the statistical gathering of data in a table format or a graph format, looking at box and whisker plots? Those are things that we have tried to teach you, and being able to look at that different means in which we gather the data and organize it in a way that we can look at it. So you have tables, you have box and whisker, ways of gathering data in that format, and being able then to also take data that you may be given and putting those in those formats. And so those are a couple: histograms, graphs, column, scatter plots. These are all ways that we have taught how to get those, how to gather data in a certain way and organize it and display it, that data, in a way that we can analyze it, look at it, and see if we can recognize patterns or those kind of things. Display of data is one of the concepts in data analysis and probability that will be on the test itself. Okay, so next concept that they have as a topic of consideration for data analysis and probability standards that would be on the standard-based assessment would be experimental probability. So as we go through experiments and start gathering data, we want to be able to determine probability of things in an experimental kind of thing. That kind of looks something like this, just so you know exactly what they're meaning by that phrase, where you have a situation like you have an arrow that will spin, and you have certain information, is it colors or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H kind of sections of this that are all the same area, and this freely spins and randomly stops. And what's the probability of stopping in A? Well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's one of the 8 possible places it can stop. So that's the probability. Well, what's the probability of it stopping in A or C? Then that's 2 of those sections. Again, that probability can be written in fraction form. It can be written in percentage by dividing 1 by 4. It can be written in decimal, and then it can be written in percentage. So be aware of the data analysis and the probability standards that are going to be possible on the SBA. And this is the second concept that we're looking at that might be on that standard-based assessment, experiential probability. They may also experimental probability. They may also do something like giving you a shape and then putting another shape in there and giving you means by which to determine the area of the two and what's the probability of landing randomly in the triangle. It's an experimental type of probability. So you'd have to use your geometry concepts and understanding, finding the area of the entire square. You have to land in there, so that's 12, and what's the probability of landing in that triangle? Then it's you take the area of that triangle and divide it by the area of the whole, and then change that to a fraction, to a decimal, to a percentage. Again, communicating that experimental type of probability kind of concepts. I'm glancing again, and really that's it. A dice, has 6 sides. It's a cube. You can land on one. Any chance is the other. What's the probability of landing on one? That's 1/6, because there's one. It's one of the 6 types of things. So those types of things are what we're talking about with experimental probability situations. Next concept is measurements of data, or the measures of that. And so what kind of things is that talking about? How do we look at the measures of data, and what kind of things might be on the SBA? Again, I see whisker and box plots. Make sure you're understanding what those are. Google those things if you're not familiar with it, and just give this refresh your memory on that. Being able to read it and determine some answers about that. Be able to take an average of data. There's another phrase that we use, it's called a mean. Average is a mean. You take the number of data points you have, and you add them all up and divide by how many you got. So you have an average or a mean. You might, they want to talk, make sure you understand standard deviation. You have to understand how to determine what the standard deviation is. Again, that's sort of a central tendency type of measurement. Google that. There's a formula for standard deviation. It's somewhat complicated, but it's not too. So that may be asked of you. There's another M kind of word, a median. Again, that's a central tendency of data. Central tendencies. That's what these are. There's also a mode, so mean, median, and mode. Know the difference between them. Mean, again, is like an average. Median is like if you have all your data points listed from smallest to biggest or biggest to smallest in an ordered fashion, that median is that middle data point in that list. You got six numbers on the left, 6 numbers on the right. The one right in the middle is what we call the median of that data. The mode is simply the one that occurs the most. If you scored 10 points in a season of games in basketball, and you scored more times, you scored 10 than any other number of a score in a game in the season, that's your mode. So those are all central tendencies that you're going to be needed to be familiar with, and how we measure, what those measures of data are that might be on the SBA. I see nothing more than that. Standard deviation, maybe the more complicated of the 4. Average, median, mean. Be familiar with those. Know they may be on the test. Okay. The next title that they have of section for data analysis of probability is scatter plots. We also use these in algebra. Scatter plots is a graph of data